Ramanujan for G is now available on the Google Play Store. Try it out for free.
Good morning, students. So we are going to now start the vapor pressure of solutions of solids in a liquid, and later on after this we will look into the colligative properties. Colligative properties, there are four different kinds of properties which we consider as colligative properties, and why we consider them as colligative properties, and what are they, and what are their impact and use in our uh, life or even in the chemistry. Those things we will see one by one. Let us first look into the vapor pressure of solutions of a solid in liquids. The solutions of solid in liquids. If someone says you might be knowing many solutions of solids in a liquid, what does it mean? It means the solvent is a liquid and the solute is a solid. And the example of such solutions are sodium chloride dissolved in water, glucose or urea dissolved in water, or iodine or sulfur dissolved in carbon disulfide. So iodine can also be dissolved in carbon disulfide, or sulfur can also be dissolved in carbon disulfide. They also constitute solutions of solids in liquids. Some physical properties such as vapor pressure of these solutions are quite different from those of pure solvents, means the solutions of solids in liquids. If you say solids in liquids, it means mostly what we are considering here is the solute is non-volatile here. The non-volatile means it is solid. That is why if it was volatile, it won't be only the usually in the solid state. It will evaporate. Maybe other it will be sublimated. Anyway, some solids are also not are also volatile, but usually the normal solids that we see, they are not volatile. So we know that and what I was saying, the some physical properties of such vapor press such as vapor pressure of these solutions are quite different from those of pure solvents. So if you add solutes or the non-volatile solutes or solids in a liquid which is a volatile, and when you look at the vapor pressure and some other properties as well, which we will see later on, so those properties you see it is quite different than the properties of the pure solvent. Like the vapor pressure, if you measure the vapor pressure of a pure solvent and if you add a solid solute into the solvent and measure the vapor pressure, you will see a change in the vapor pressure. You will see the vapor pressure of solution is quite different. It is lesser than the vapor pressure of the pure solvent. And a liquid at a given temperature vaporize, that we know vaporize is vaporization or the evaporation, and if it gets evaporated, it means it is a volatile liquid. Under equilibrium conditions, the vapor pressure exerted by vapors of the liquid over the liquid phase is called the vapor pressure. This thing we have seen earlier. The pure liquid is there, and because of the evaporations of the molecules of the liquid goes into the vapor phase, and if the container is closed, so this liquid will also experience certain pressure of the gaseous molecules which went into the vapor phase, and that pressure we call as the vapor pressure. And the thing that we measure this pressure when the equilibrium is achieved means the what is the equilibrium in that case means the now even if the equilibrium is achieved, some molecules of the pure solvent will be evaporating, it will be going into the gaseous phase, and some molecules from the gaseous phase will come back into the solvent phase, and the molecules going into the vapor phase and molecules coming back into the solvent phase or the liquid phase, this will be the same. So that means the equilibrium is achieved. If the liquid is a pure, its entire surface is occupied by molecules of the liquid. This is what we know. If this is a pure solvent, pure liquid, what we will see that its entire surface will be occupied by the molecules of this pure solvent, whatever the solvent it is. If it is water, so the entire surface of that water will be occupied by the water molecules. However, if you add a non-volatile solute, if you add, what will happen? Some of the solute particles, you can see like solute here as a green particle. Some of the solid particles will also be there on the surface of this solution. And why? Because this is a homogeneous solution, and the particles, the concentration, if you look at the concentration of the solute at the surface, it should be equal to the concentration of solute at the bottom as well. So because this is a homogeneous solution, that is what we call the solution. It's a homogeneous solution, and that is why we see that these particles which are non-volatile, they will not go into the vapor phase because they are not volatile. they will not be evaporated easily. They are heavier molecules, or either if they are not heavier, they are strongly attracted by the molecules of the solvent or the other solute molecules or solid particles. So they will not easily escape the surface. So whatever the now what you can see, the number of molecules of the solvent now at the surface is reduced. The fractional distribution, its fraction is reduced. And since the number of molecules on the surface is reduced, what will we see? The molecules going into the vapor phase will also be reduced. And the rate of molecules going into the vapor phase will reduce. What does it mean? At the given temperature, its vapor pressure will also be reduced. And so what we say, the vapor pressure of the solution at a given temperature, if the solvent is volatile and solute is non-volatile, so what will we see? Only solvent particles or some molecules of solvent will go into the vapor phase. So the vapor will contain only the solvent particles or molecules of solvent. It won't contain molecules of solute because solute is a non-volatile solute. Yeah. So this vapor pressure of solution at a given temperature is found to be lower than the vapor pressure of the pure solvent at the same temperature. This is what I have just explained. In the solution, the surface has both solute and solvent molecules. Thereby, the fraction of the surface covered by solvent molecules gets reduced. This is what we have already seen. And in the non-volatile solute, the non-volatile solute is added. The vapor pressure of the solution is solely from the solvent alone. This is also I have explained. Consequently, the number of solvent molecules escaping from the surface is correspondingly reduced. Thus, the vapor pressure is also reduced. This we have seen already. The decrease in vapor pressure of solvent depends on the quantity of non-volatile solute present in the solution, irrespective of its nature. What does it mean? If the non-volatile solute, if you are adding, and if you are increasing its concentration, if you are increasing its concentration means the number of solute particles, non-volatile solute on the surface will now increase. If the number of non-volatile solutes on the surface will increase, and anyway the surface area is not going to change because you have put this solution in the same basin. The surface area, the large number of now surface area will be covered by non-volatile solutes. The solute now solvent particles which is exposed to the air and which can go into the vapor phase, their number is reduced. So if it's increasing the concentration, what we see, the vapor pressure of the solution also. Solution means now the vapor pressure, vapor contains only solvent, so that you can also say vapor pressure of the solvent. Usually that we call the vapor pressure of the solution, but that vapor pressure is vapor pressure of the solvent only, it will be reduced. And what people have observed, that this vapor pressure is independent on the nature of the solute particle. Whatever the solute, the particle of the solutes you add, it won't be going to change. The vapor pressure will not be affected. It is the number of the particles that is going to affect the vapor pressure. And number of particles, we know number of particles are associated with the mole of that substance, and mole divided by volume of the solution, that we know it's a concentration. So it is actually the concentration of solute that is going to affect the vapor pressure, and not the type of solute or the chemical nature of the solute, unless the conditions are given, unless the solute particles do not associate or do not get dissociated. If solute particles not gets associated or dissociated, if they will get associated, means suppose two molecules are coming and forming a strong hydrogen bond and getting associated, means now two molecules will behave as a one single particle, because the dimer is formed, which is quite stable energetically. It means the number of particles that you have added initially into the solution phase, now that particles, effective particles, their number is reduced. So that in that case you may see, and this kind of association may depend on the chemical nature of the solute. Or similarly, dissociation like NaCl or the other ionic molecules, or the ionic molecules means the salts of strong acids and strong bases. They are easily ionizable in water, and those salts, if you put into the solution, they will be dissociated into separate ions, cations and anions. Now the number of particles can increase. So this is also depends on the chemical nature. So otherwise, if this association or dissociation does not do not happen, if it does not happen, then it means that the chemical nature of solute will not affect the vapor pressure. It is only the number of particles of the solute that is going to affect the vapor pressure. For example, if you add 1 mole of sugar in 1 kg of water, and if you add 1 kilogram of urea in 1 kilogram, 1 mole of urea in 1 kilogram of water. 1 mole, if you are adding, what does it mean? 1 mole of sugar or 1 mole of urea. 1 mole of all the substances contain Avogadro number of particles. So the number of particles of solute is same now. And if you are taking same amount of solvent, it means that if it is in kg solvent, 1 kg of solvent, the molar concentration of both the solvents will be the same. The concentration is same, number of particles is also same, and these particles, whether it is sucrose or whether it is of urea, they do not associate or dissociate so easily that much into the solution. So what will we see? The colligative property, which vapor pressure will be affected accordingly. So vapor pressure will be lowered by the same amount. It will be decreased by the same amount, same extent. We know that Trout's law in general form is stated as earlier we have seen. For any solution, the partial vapor pressure of each volatile component. In this case that we have seen that there are binary component and solute is the non-volatile. So here only we will consider this law for the solvent molecules. But this general law for the both, if the both the solutes and solvents are volatile, we have seen earlier the binary liquids when we studied the vapor pressure of binary liquids. So now let us go again. For any solution, the partial vapor pressure of each volatile component in the solution is directly proportional to its mole fraction. This is what we have seen earlier in the case of two volatile liquids which form the binary solution. We have seen their partial pressure of them is directly proportional to their corresponding mole fractions. Here in this case, we will look into this law only for the solvent molecules, because solvent is the only component which is volatile in this case in the current scenario. So in the binary solution, let us denote the solvent binary solution where the solute is non-volatile. Let us denote solvent by 1 and solute by 2. When the solute is non-volatile, only the solvent molecules are present in the vapor phase and contribute to the vapor pressure. This we have seen. Let P1 be the vapor pressure of the solvent into the solution phase, and X1 be the mole fraction of the solute in the solvent, and P1 naught, this is P1 naught, be its vapor pressure in the pure state. Pure state means the pure solvent is there. There is no solute particles in that state. So that is called the pure state of the solvent. So this is P1 naught. Then according to Raoult's law, for the solvents only we can apply P1 will be directly proportional to the X1, which is mole fraction of the solute into the solvent. Molar fraction of the solute, simply you can say the solution. So mole fraction, and this we know will be equal to P1 will be equal to X1 P1 naught, and P1 naught is that we know the vapor pressure of the pure solvent, and this law we have already seen. The proportionality constant is equal to the vapor pressure of the pure solvent P1 naught. A plot between vapor pressure, if you plot a graph between P1 and X1 here, and the partial vapor pressure of, it is not the partial, it is the pure vapor pressure, because only one volatile component is there, only one component is there in the vapor phase. So it is the total pressure, the vapor pressure. So vapor pressure will be equal to the X1 P1 naught. And if you plot a graph between P1 and X1, P1 means the vapor pressure of the solvent into the solution phase and against mole fraction of the solvent, and it's a mole fraction of the solvent. You should obtain a linear graph. This is what we actually obtain. We obtain a linear graph. You can see with the vapor pressure increases with the mole fraction of the solvent. When the mole fraction of the solvent, initially mole fraction of the solvent is 0, means this is a pure solute which is a non-volatile. Now you increase the mole fraction of the solvent, means you are increasing the relative concentration of the solvent into the binary solution, and finally you are making it 1, means it is coming to be a pure solvent, and you can see it linearly increases this way, the vapor pressure of the pure solvent. Now let us come to the colligative properties. Colligative properties. Colligative is a term which came from the Latin. Co means together and ligare means to bind. And these colligative properties are the properties of the solution related to the number of particles dissolved in the solution, irrespective of their nature, irrespective of the nature of the solute. Means what is the number of solute particles irrespective of their nature, as we saw in the case of vapor pressure. So same number of these number of particles will define these properties, whether how much change or something, whatever it will be, which will be defined by the number of particles and not by the nature of those solute particles. So the colligative properties are properties of solution related to the number of particles dissolved in the solution, and number of the particles that dissolved in the solution is the number of solute particles irrespective of their nature. There are four colligative properties that we actually look into. So there are these four properties which are considered to be the colligative properties. First is one is the osmotic pressure, then the lowering of vapor pressure. The vapor pressure that we have seen, it lowers. The lowering of vapor pressure is also a colligative property, because if you increase, we have just seen, increase the number of solid particles, the vapor pressure will will be reduced correspondingly. And the elevation of boiling points, the depression of freezing points. Elevation of boiling points means the increase in boiling points. Elevation means increase, and depression means the decrease. So decrease in the freezing point. So freezing point, suppose if you add certain solute particles into the water, what does it mean? Now the water will evaporate, boil at higher temperature. The solution of, suppose, NaCl solution of water will boil at higher temperature. Not only, it will freeze at lower temperature, means the freezing temperature or the melting point of the solution, the water that we consider, mostly it is water. Now the melting point will be reduced. So water will freeze at even the lower temperature, below 0 degrees centigrade. Now let us look into these properties one by one. Let us first look into the osmotic pressure. Before going into the osmotic pressure, let us understand osmosis. Because once we know the osmosis, we will also understand osmotic pressure and something how this osmotic pressure depends on the number of particles of the solute that we will also see. There are many phenomena which we observe in our day-to-day life is related to osmosis. For example, raw mangoes shrivels when pickled in brine. Brine is a solid solution, and when you cut a raw mango and put into it, you will see that this raw mango, it shrinks, it shrivels into the pickle. We form pickle by using this salt solution. It shrivels into the pickle. Why it shrivels? This process that you will see, it is, you can understand here, is because of the osmosis. And how osmosis happens, how and why it will, why why it shrinks, that we'll see little later. Wilted flowers revive when placed in fresh water. If you put wilted flowers into the water, you'll see it revives, it regains its original feature, the external feature. The blood cells collapse when suspended in saline water. This is also one property. The blood cells, not only blood cell, any human cell, if you put into the saline, high concentrated saline solution, high concentration, then it will collapse. Resin swells while making kheer. So you might have seen, I do not know what we call kheer in your local languages, but the kheer is something that you use milk, put some rice grains into it, the small pieces, and then you add also dry fruit, something like this. So if you put resin that we call monakka or kishmish, when you put it into the milk, what we'll see is, it actually it swells. It swells, it becomes like the its size becomes larger. And why it swells? This is also because of the osmosis. Even you might have used gram chana, you might have put it into the water and you might have observed that it swells. This is also because of the osmosis. One thing that is common in all these processes is that membrane binds all these substances. Whatever the substances that I have mentioned just now, whether it is a pickled mango, so whether it is mango pieces or the flowers or the blood cells or the resin or the gram or something, whatever those things that you look into, or even the grapes, if you put a grape and put into the highly concentrated sugar syrup, the syrup, if you put, what will it will actually shrink, it will also shrivel. So this is also osmosis. And even the grapes, they all these substances, They are bound through a membrane, and these membranes can be of animal or vegetable origin. The animal origin that we know, it's the pig's bladder or past, or the sorry sorry or the plant origin that we have seen. All these things, the plant origin, these membranes are of the related to the plant. These plants in these examples all we have seen. The parchment, or can be parchment, is this is also of the, it is a khal of the deer or something. Khal means the skin of the deer. When you remove it, it's called parchment. This is from the animal origin or the plant origin, that is cellophane, which is a synthetic origin. Cellophane and plant origin we have seen. All these substances, this membrane, the outer covering is the membrane. Although these membranes appear to be continuous, when you look into the gram on the even the grapes, everything, you will see that it is a continuous. It is, there is no gap between them that we do not see, we do not observe. However, from our naked eyes, but these membranes actually they contain a network of submicroscopic pores or pores, very small pores that they contain, and through these small pores are so small that only solvent molecules can move through them. Solute particles usually are larger in size, they will not move through it. You can think at the water molecule, size of water molecule, and the size of Na plus sodium ion. Sodium ion, you can consider sodium ion is smaller in size than the water molecule. And but the thing is, the sodium ion, if you are considering sodium ion into the water, what happens actually? Sodium ion is surrounded by different water molecules. So water molecules are the first cell water molecules are covalently bound to the sodium atom. So six water molecules will bound to sodium ion, and because of that formation, what happens actually? Its size becomes larger. So even if you think that the certain solute particles, they are actually smaller in size, but they are in solution, not in a solution, they are only not in reality smaller than the size of the water molecules. In reality, they are larger because of the hydration. And other solute particles, which are also, it can be larger in size, or they also get hydrated or solvated. And so what happens, that through these membranes are so small, their pores are so small that only solvent particles or molecules of solvent can move through it. And this kind of membranes are called semi-permeable membranes. Semi-permeable membranes, it is permeable, but it is not fully permeable. It doesn't allow everything to pass through it. It allows certain selective things to pass through it, and that is the solvent in this case. And one example that you can see here, this is a synthetic semi-permeable membrane like cellophane, and one you see the solvent molecules here. This is a semi-permeable membrane, and solution is there. If you put it into it, what you will see, the water rises into it, and the water goes up to here, and this pressure that we know, the pressure we can calculate. Initially, if you put the solution only up to this level, but if putting into it, what happens, the water goes up into it, the volume of the solution increases, and it goes up into it till this pressure. What is this pressure? We know the pressure is equal to H rho g or HdG. H is the height of this column, rho is the density of the liquid in this column, and g is the gravitational acceleration. So this pressure, so it goes up into the water solution. This water moves through the semi-permeable membrane, goes into its level, rises into this tube, and after certain time it stops, means it attains equilibrium. When it attains equilibrium, and the pressure, whatever the pressure that is there because of this column, that pressure we call as we can calculate, and we can calculate it from this formula HdG, and this is called the osmotic pressure, one can say. Let us look into it again in a different way. If this semi-permeable membrane placed between the solvent and solution, so semi-permeable membrane, inside it the solution is there, and outside is the solvent. The solvent molecules will flow through the membrane from pure solvent to the solution. This process of flow of solvent is called osmosis. The flow of solvent from the solution to from the solvent to the pure solvent to the solution is called osmosis. And the flow will continue till equilibrium is attained. And when the equilibrium is attained, this pressure that I said, one can call it as a osmotic pressure. However, osmotic pressure is defined in some other way, but that pressure is exactly numerically equal to the pressure one can calculate using this column, measure using this column. The flow of solvent from its side to solution side across a semi-permeable membrane can be stopped. And so what happens if this HDG pressure, suppose I already provide this much pressure into the solution. Suppose I have a piston here, I kept a piston, and this pressure if I put here, already when I pour this entire membrane with the solution into the solvent, if I already provide this pressure here, so what will I see? I won't see any flow of the liquid from the solvent to the solution, because this rises only till this pressure is achieved here. Means some pressure is already there into the solution, or the sorry, in the solvent phase, that because of that pressure it goes up there. So the flow of solvent from its side to the solution side across a semi-permeable membrane can be stopped if some extra pressure is applied on the solution. And this pressure that just stops, which just stops the flow of solvent, is called as osmotic pressure of the solution. It means if you keep adding the pressure, if you keep increasing the pressure, if you keep pushing the piston, and what you see slowly at you reach to a pressure at which it just stops the flow of solvent from the solvent molecules from the solvent to the solution, and that pressure is called the osmotic pressure. However, in day-to-day life, the osmosis that we had defined for when a pure solvent and a solution is taken. However, what we see usually in our life, we actually consider one solution. We also consider one solution to the other solutions with different concentrations. So osmosis in general, let us define osmosis in general for all types of solutes and solvent or something like this. So how it is defined? The phenomena of the passage of pure solvent from a region of lower concentration. If the pure solvent is there, of course, there is no solute. The concentration of solute is least in the case of pure solvent. So what is the region of lower concentration? The passage of pure solvent from a region of lower concentration of the solution to a region of higher concentration through a semi-permeable membrane is called osmosis. And this concentration could be of any kind of solute. It is not that this concentration could be of the same types of solute in both the solvents that you are considering, lower concentration and higher concentration. So the driving force of the osmosis is known as osmotic pressure. And why this pressure is there? Because certain osmotic pressure is associated with the solution, and that pressure we call the osmotic pressure. If you provide osmotic pressure already to the solution, then the flow will not happen. If you don't provide that much pressure there, so that much pressure it actually attains the solution gets by absorbing water molecules from the lower solvent, or even the lower concentration of the solution or the pure solvent. Now let us look into this. So if the excess pressure which must be applied to a solution in order to prevent flow of solvent into the solution through the semi-permeable membrane. So this is called the osmotic pressure. Also, osmotic pressure is the excess pressure which must be applied to a solution in order to prevent flow of solvent into the solution through the semi-permeable membrane. Let us look into this figure. Suppose there is a solution. Initially, this is a tube. So two tubes are there, and in one form of the suit, let us keep a semi-permeable membrane at the bottom in the middle, and at one side, one arm of this tube, you put pure water, and one arm you put a pure solution. So what will you observe? This is the initial condition. What will you observe? So water will flow from the pure solvent to the solution. It doesn't mean that water will not flow from the solution to the solvent, but the net flow, the rate of the flow of water from the pure solvent to the solution is higher than the rate of flow of the solvent from the solution to the solvent. And because this rate is initially high, so more and more solvent molecules, and the number in the solution will increase. And what we see at the equilibrium, then the equilibrium will be attained, and at this equilibrium we will see the water column is now decreased because the water is now being transferred. It is moved to the solution phase. Now it's You can see here from this level water has decreased, and in this level the water, this column will rise, and this difference, the current water level difference and this solution this level difference, that one can measure, and this is nothing but the osmotic pressure, and the measure that one can do using the same formula H rho G. H is the height of the column, rho is the density of this solution. It is not the density of the solvent, because here in this column it is the solution, and G is the gravitational acceleration. And because of this extra pressure, that is pressure, if it is there, that pressure is the osmotic pressure. If you apply same pressure at the beginning here itself, so what will we see? You won't see any flow of the any net flow of the solvent from the solvent to the liquid, because this much pressure is already there, and this water is flowing because it has to maintain this osmotic pressure, because the pressure on the both the arms is not the same. If the pressure on the both the arms is not same, that is why this liquid is moving. And suppose if it was a pure liquid, what will we see? You see this liquid and this level will be the same. Why? Because this pressure that is applied by the liquid on this side and pressure on this side will be equal. However, when it is the solution, that pressure is not equal. And when that pressure is not equal, so this level there, it is rearranged, and it is rearranged till this pressure. Suppose if I get this height, and to this pressure, again this pressure and this pressure, this will be equal. So from this height, suppose this is the height, if I measure this height to this pressure H through HDG, and this height to this pressure by using this density should be equal. That is why these liquids are in this column, and if you take that difference, you will get the osmotic pressure, and that difference you can directly get by this as well. So what we see, and in this case, this is the equilibrium which is achieved. At equilibrium, also the flow of liquid happens, flow of the molecules of the solvent happens, because solvent molecules, the semi-permeable membrane can allow the movement of solvents even from the solution to the solute, because that is has enough pore size, and so this flow will happen, but this flow, the rate of the flow in both the directions is same, so that we call the equilibrium is achieved. And now if you apply that this pressure, the certain external pressure at the beginning itself, so what will you see? You won't see any flow of the net flow of the liquid or the solvent molecules towards any direction, though there is a flow. And again, this pressure that we call the osmotic pressure, this is how it defines. And the value of this pressure, how much this pressure and through the piston which would apply, we can obtain using this experiment. Once osmosis is complete, the pressure exerted by solution and the solvent on the semi-permeable membrane is same. So this is what we call, I had explained. Osmosis is passive process. Why it is called passive process? Because it happens on its own. You don't need to provide any energy for this to happen. If certain process is there, and to happen that process, if you need to provide energy, then that process is called active process. Means if I am lifting a bottle of water, it means I am providing certain energy, I'm using certain energy. This is the active process. And the passive process means if the water gets lifted, this bottle of water gets lifted automatically without applying any pressure. This is called the passive, or any energy, this is called the passive process. So this osmosis is a passive process because it happens without any expenditure of energy. A net flow of solvent always happens from the region of lower concentration to the higher concentration. This we have seen already. The osmotic pressure is the colligative properties, as it depends on the number of solute molecules and not on their identity. So that is why we call it as colligative properties, because osmotic pressure, it doesn't distinguish between the type of the solute molecules. It just distinguish between the number of particles of the solute. And for dilute solutions, and actually this one found out that for dilute solution, osmotic pressure is proportional to the molarity. Molarity, suppose molarity is C of the solution at a given temperature T. If the molarity of the solution at a given temperature T is C, then osmotic pressure pi is proportional to the C. If you remove the proportionality and add certain constant, that constant is RT, where R is the universal gas constant, T is the temperature. So what we get, pi is equal to CRT. And the similar equation you might have seen in when we have studied the ideal gas equation, where we have written this equation: P pressure is equal to CRT. C is the concentration or something like that. So C is the concentration, the molar concentration. So now if what can we do if pi is equal to CRT? This is what the one half said, pi proportional to the molar concentration. Now if the C is there, C means what? C is the number, which is the molar concentration. Molar concentration is the number of moles divided by volume of the solution in liter, and N is the number of moles of solute. So what can I write? Pi, I can write as pi is equal to N divided by V into RT, or N RT by V. Now I can take V, which was in denominator, to the left hand side. So it will become pi V is equal to nRT. And pi V is equal to nRT. If you remember ideal gas equation, which is PV is equal to nRT, where in that case P is the pressure of the gas and pressure applied by the gas into the container. Here pi is the osmotic pressure. Pi is also pressure here, but that pressure here in the case of solution is osmotic pressure. Rest of all the other terms are same. V is the volume of the solution here in this case. In that case, it was volume of the gas. R is the universal gas constant. Same here. T is the temperature that we know. N here is the number of moles of solute particles. In the case of gases, it was the number of moles of the gas. And so we obtain this equation pi v is equal to nRT, which is called 1/2 general equation for dilute solution, which is parallel to the ideal gas equation. Now, using this equation, we can also find out the molar mass of the solute, because what we know, the N, number of moles. What can I write? Number of moles as the weight, the mass of the solute divided by molar weight of the solute, because this is the number of moles of solute. The number of moles of solute is equal to the mass of the solute divided by molar mass of the solute. So I can write pi v is equal to, so pi v is equal to nRT. So I can write pi v is equal to Wt divided by M2. W2 is the mass of the solute divided by M2 is the molar mass of the solute. So the pi v is equal to W2RT divided by M2. So now I can find out the equation for the M2, the relation for the M2. The M2, if I take on the left hand side, pi v will come to the right hand side to the denominator. So M2 will be equal to W2RT by pi v. This equation you should remember. Even if you do not remember, if you understand the process, how it is derived, so you can find out this equation anyway. You can derive and solve the numerical problems. It is better if you remember this equation, because in that case you can directly apply this equation, and in that case you can save the time. So this is which is important when you are writing for a certain competitive examination, because time also matters there. So the M2 is equal to W2 RT divided by pi v. Again I say all the W2 is what? It is the weight or the mass of the solute. M2 is the molar mass of the solute. R is the gas constant. T is the temperature. Pi is the osmotic pressure, which one can find out experimentally. V is the volume of the solution. So with that, if these things are given, you can find out the molar mass of any solute. However, for getting accurate value of molar mass of a solute, we must take care of few things. The solute must not be volatile, because here in all these cases, the colligative properties what we are looking at is the non-volatile solutes. So if the solute is volatile, some of the solutes will be evaporated, and in that case, what will you see? The actual number of particles of the solute is not there in that you have considered based on the amount you have taken. That number of particles is not there. Some of the particles of the solute has gone into the vapor phase. So in that case, the W that you have taken experimentally and the real W will change. So it will not, in that case, give the accurate molar mass. Another thing is the solute should not undergo dissociation or association into the solution. The dissociation and association, when it happens, actually whatever the number of particles you have ideally considered, that it has changed. In the case of association, the number of particles has increased, and in the case of dissociation, number of particles has increased. And we know that the osmotic pressure is colligative property, and it depends on the number of particles. So the number of association and dissociation also may also alters the result. and the solution must be dilute. Why? Because this equation actually that is derived is for the dilute solution. The one top equation is valid only for the dilute solution. So for dilute solution only pi is proportional to the molar concentration. And thus, what can we do? Knowing the quantities W, T, pi, and V, we can calculate the molar mass of the solute. This method is widely used to determine molar mass of proteins, polymers, and other micromolecules. Why we use this method to measure the molar mass of the macromolecules? Because other methods, when we look at the mass spectrometry, other things method, they use either radiation or they use certain amount of heat or certain processes. And in that case, what happens in those processes, sometimes polymers are not stable, somewhere they breaks. And so in that case, you cannot accurately measure their molar mass. So we resort to this method, osmotic pressure method, which is dependent on the polygative property and means the number of particles of the solute. And there you can actually see at the normal temperature, you can measure the molar mass, the entire molecule is intact there. The osmotic pressure method has the advantage over other methods as pressure measurement is around room temperature. So there are also other methods, the rest of the three colligative properties, we can also use them to find out the molar mass of a solute. However, those methods, when we look at, we'll see those things later on, but those methods actually they use molality. And in the case of osmotic pressure, we have just seen we use molarity. And the molality means you are using the mass of the solvent, and measuring mass of the solvent something when you are going to measure the mass of the solvent, you transfer the solvent then into somewhere or something, then with some of the solvent will already be lost because of the adhesive process with the pot or something like this. So volume, measuring volume is something, okay, you can use uh, measuring flask or something, the volumetric flask, and you can actually at certain levels you can make the solution and make up the volume so you have the desired concentration just by measuring the mass of the solute. We can find out the actual concentration in the molarity. So the osmotic pressure method has advantage over the other methods as the pressure measurement is around room temperature, means the pressure measurement that we do is around room temperature, and also the molarity of solution is used instead of molality. Also, as compared to the other colligative properties, its magnitude is large even for the very dilute solutions. The change in it means the change in osmotic pressure even for the very dilute solution is significant that we can measure with least amount of error. However, if you look at the relative lowering of vapor pressure or the elevation of boiling points or depression of freezing points, in those cases we see the very small difference. And very small difference, sometimes what happens, the measuring instruments also are associated, their measurements is associated with certain uncertainty with that we have seen. Certain uncertainty means they are also associated with certain errors. So sometimes this difference might be in the error bar, so that you can not tell that much with that much certainty that whatever the molar mass that you have obtained is actually accurate. But when this difference is larger in that case, is the smaller error is there on the decimal places, you can see that will give even though the more accurate result because the change is larger. Based on the osmotic pressure, we also define different solutions, their relative concentration in terms of tonicity, and if and tonicity means it is the relative, the comparative concentration of the solution that we consider. If you consider two solutions of the same concentration, so two solutions of the same concentration means both the solution will have same osmotic pressure. And because their concentration is same means the number of solute particles in both the solution is same. And this means the osmotic pressure is same. So you call that solution as an isotonic solution. Iso means same, tonic means that their concentration is same. So a pair of solutions having the same osmotic pressure is called isotonic solution. Isotonic solution, same osmotic pressure. It is defined as pair of the solution having same osmotic pressure, but it eventually means that both the solution have the same concentration. When a semi-permeable membrane separates such solutions, the isotonic solutions, no osmosis occurs between them. No osmosis occurs between them. It means there is no net flow of solvent molecules from one solution to the other. There might be certain flow of solvent molecules, but the rate of flow is same in both the cases, in both the directions. It means that equilibrium is already there. It is already equilibrium is already established. For example, the osmotic pressure associated with the fluid inside the blood cell is equivalent to that of 0.9% sodium chloride solution. 0.9% means the mass by volume sodium chloride solution. Means if you make a sodium chloride solution where 0.9 gram of sodium chloride is dissolved in 100 ml of water, which is called the mass by volume percentage. The solute mass of solute you take in gram and volume of solvent you take in ml. So 0.9 gram solute of the solute, which is sodium chloride here, is dissolved in 100 ml of water. If this is there, the same concentration we find concentration of the normal blood cells. And that is why if you, and this concentration of sodium chloride is there in the saline solution that we inject intravenously in certain purposes when someone needs water or something like diarrhea and other purposes. So this much pressure must be there. If this pressure, this concentration of the sodium chloride is more than 0.9%, so what will happen? Now the blood cell will be hypotonic, and the solution, that the sodium chloride solution is hypertonic, and a sodium chloride solution is hypertonic means its concentration is more, the osmotic pressure associated with it is more, and then in that case what will happen, the water molecule will move from cells, blood cells, to the outside. It will come outside into the blood serum, it will come out. So molecules of water will move out of the blood cells, and when these molecules of water move out of the blood cells, because you have added concentrated solution of NaCl or something like that, then what will happen? So cells will shrink, and cells will shrink, and finally they will collapse. And such a solution, what will the solution more than 0.9% mass by volume concentration of NaCl is called hypertonic solution. So any two solution, if you take of the solution which has higher concentration, is called hypertonic solution, and the other solution which has lower concentration is called the hypotonic solution. The example of hypotonic solution that we consider, you can take the NaCl solution in water which concentration is less than 0.9%. Suppose you take 0.7% mass by volume NaCl in solution, and if you inject now this into the blood, what will happen now? The more water is there, the osmotic pressure of blood cells is more, and the water molecules will move from the blood serum of the solution to the blood cells, and the more water molecules will flow into the cells, cells will swell, and finally if the enough water is being absorbed, so it will finally burst, and finally burst means again the cell will die. So that is why this much the concentration of the NaCl should be constant, and it should be equal to or nearly equal to the concentration that is there into the blood cells. Let us look into this question. 200 cubic centimeter of an aqueous solution of protein contains 1.6 gram of protein. The osmotic pressure of such a solution at 300 Kelvin is found to be 2.57 into 10 to the power minus 3 bar. Calculate the molar mass of the protein. So this is the way that we use this method of osmotic pressure to calculate the molar mass of biomolecules, of macromolecules, the larger molecules. So this way, third one can design an experiment. So 200 centimeter cubic centimeters, 200 ml aqueous solution is taken. The volume of the solution is 200 ml, and 1.26 gram of protein is taken. The mass of protein one can measure before making the solution. The osmotic pressure is now then measured, which is equal to 2.57 at 10 to the power minus 3 bar at 300 Kelvin. And the concern that then we have to find out the molar mass of the protein, and that we know the pi, the osmotic pressure is already given. The volume is given 200 ml means 0.2 liter, and temperature 300 Kelvin, that is the temperature should be in Kelvin, which is given in the Kelvin, so we can use it directly. The gas constant is 0.083 3 liter bar per mole per Kelvin. We have taken this numerical value in this units because the pressure here is in bar and volume that we can have was given into the ml or cubic centimeter, which can convert into the liter. So this numerical, this value of the R we have taken. So now we can calculate the molecular mass of the protein. We can use this formula directly. So M2 will be equal to W2RT divided by pi B, W2RT divided by pi B, WT is the molar. So W2 WT is the mass of the protein, and the mass of protein is given as 1.26 gram. So 1.26 gram we can put here value, and R value of R is here. So this value we put here, and value of temperature is 300 Kelvin, and then other values, value of phi experimentally obtained value that is being put here, and the V volume in liter that I put. And after solving this, what will you get? The Kelvin per Kelvin is cancelled, per mole here, the per mole will be there, and liter, this liter is cancelled, bar, the bar is cancelled, this gram, and so anyway, so this gram will remain be there. So this is what we get, 61022, and numerical values when you solve, we will get 61,022 gram per mole. So gram and rest of the units are getting cancelled out. Only the what is left is gram per mole. So gram per mole is the unit, means this much gram per mole of the molecule is there. This is a molar mass that we know, because molar mass we measure in the terms of gram per mole. Now let us look into the examples of osmosis in our day-to-day life, and few examples that we had seen earlier. Let us explain that. The raw mango placed in concentrated salt solution loses water via osmosis and travels into the beaker. What happens if you look into the concentrated salt solution, the salt solution, that is salt concentration inside the mango is less, and salt concentration inside the mango is less, so water will flow from the mango to the brine solution, and so what will happen? It will shrivel, it will shrink into the pickles. Wilted flowers revive when placed in fresh water by absorbing water. So what happens? Concentration inside the wilted flower is more, and water is pure water. So it will absorb water molecules, and after absorbing water molecules, it will regain its external appearance. Means it will revive its external feature. A carrot that has become limp because of the loss of water into the atmosphere can be placed into the water and making it form once again. So if the carrot, if you know, sometimes because of the water, it loses into the atmosphere, it becomes limp. So you put into the water and it actually regain its structure. You might have also observed in some of the shops where the vegetable vendors are there, they keep some of the vegetables into the water, in particularly in the summer seasons. So, and that why they do, because this of the heat that is there into the atmosphere, the water molecules move out of these vegetables and they become actually limp, and they won't look good. It will look as if it is not fresh. So what do? They put those vegetables into the water. Sometimes some vegetables they keep into the water, like anyway. So I don't. So, and some vegetables they put into the water, then take out, or even sometimes they sprinkle water. They sprinkle water, that because the wilting or this limping will not happen. And why won't happen? Because if it is already limped, it will absorb water and revive its shape. Or if it is there, if you are sprinkling water, so the water from this vegetable will not evaporate. Water at its surface that is sprinkled from outside, it will evaporate. So the water of that vegetable is still there in its body. So people taking a lot of salt or salty food experience water retention in tissues and cells and intracellular spaces because of the osmosis. So you should not take extra salt. If you take extra salt, what will happen? The concentration of the salt in your cells will be more, and even the intracellular spaces. So what will happen if you drink water? That much of the water will be now absorbed, and it will be retained in our body. It will not be left by the kidney to pass through the urine. And so what will happen in eventually the weight of the person will increase, the puffiness or swelling will happen, and this puffiness and swelling of the body is called edema. This is the disease that we consider edema, the condition. Water movement from the soil into the plant roots and subsequently into upper portions of the plant is partly due to the osmosis. So what happens? The plants, all the plants, their roots you might have seen at the tip of the roots, they have found hair roots. We call the hair roots very small alveoli type structures, and those hair roots actually absorb water, and they absorb water from the soil because inside concentration of water is concentration of salt is more than the concentration of salt that is there into the soil. So water will move into the root hairs, and subsequently it will go into the roots, and through xylems it will go into the all parts of the plant. The prevention of meat by salting and fruits by adding sugar protects against bacterial action. It will not out so easily. So why? Because through the process of osmosis, some salt is already added to the meat. So what will happen if the bacteria will come on that portion? What will happen? Bacteria and already salt is there on the surface. So because of the salt, bacteria will actually, the loss of water will happen from the bacterial body, bacterium, and because of the loss of water, bacterium will die. Or similarly, in the case of fruits, usually don't add salts because fruits are sweet. It will change its taste. So we add sugar. So if you add sugar, or which we also call the candied fruits. So what happens? The sugar is there. So anyway, the osmosis will not depend on the nature of the solute, the chemical nature of solute. It is just the phenomena related to the number of particles of the solute. So whether you add salt or the sugar, it doesn't affect. So for the fruits, we add sugar, and that because of that sugar, again, water loss will happen from the bacterium cell, and so bacterium will shrivel and die. So these are certain applications that we use of the osmosis. Now let's come to the reverse osmosis. When a solution is separated from a pure, the osmosis that we have seen, osmosis is what? The movement of water from lower concentration of solution to the higher concentration, a concentrated solution through a semi-permeable membrane, or movement of water molecules from pure solvent to the solution. This is osmosis. And what is reverse osmosis? If you reverse this process, means if suppose you apply certain things, certain techniques, and because of those techniques, what happens? The movement of water molecules happens from hypertonic solution to the hypotonic solution. Hypotonic solution, high concentrated solution to the lower concentration. And so this process is reverse osmosis. Or if the movement of water molecules happen from the solution, any concentration, whether dilute or concentrated solution, to the pure solvent, this process will be called reverse osmosis. And reverse osmosis is an active process. It will not happen on its own, because osmosis is passive, it happens on its own. Reverse osmosis is an active process. We need to provide energy, we need to provide certain things for this process to happen. So this process, so when a solution is separated from, let us again look, separated from pure water by semi-permeable membrane, water moves towards the solution through osmosis. This process continues till osmotic pressure becomes equal to the hydrostatic pressure, means the equilibrium is achieved. Or osmosis can be stopped by applying external pressure equal to the osmotic pressure of the solution that we have seen. I have explained it. If the external pressure greater than the osmotic pressure is applied, so what is osmotic pressure? If you just apply osmotic pressure to the solution, there will be no movement of solvent molecules from the solvent to the solution will happen. However, if you apply extra pressure, more pressure, larger pressure, what will happen? Then the solvent molecules will now move from the solution to the solvent phase. And this process is now the reverse osmosis, opposite to the osmosis. So if external pressure greater than the osmotic pressure is applied, the flow of solvent molecules happen from the solution to the pure solvent through semi-permeable membrane. That is in the reverse direction of osmosis. This process is termed as reverse osmosis and is this reverse process of reverse osmosis is of great practical utility. What is the great practical utility? That is particularly that we see in the desalination of seawater for getting fresh drinking water. Many countries in the world, they use desalination plants to meet their potable water requirements, the drinking water requirements. To fulfill, they use water from the oceans, and that because they do this desalination process to reverse osmosis, and they get drinkable or the potable water. So if you look into this figure, but we see this salt water or the saline water, the water from the sea or oceans, and the fresh water. If there is no pressure, what will happen? The water will move from fresh water to the salt water if they are separated by a semi-permeable membrane. However, if you use a piston this side, and if you're using piston, you increase the pressure. If you increase the pressure, after a certain time, you will reach to the osmotic pressure when there is no net flow of water molecules happen between fresh water and the salt water. And if you increase that pressure further, so that you are applying extra pressure, larger pressure, and after applying that pressure, what will happen? The solvent molecules, the water molecules will now start moving from salted water, the saline water, the ocean water, sea water to the fresh water. And now that extra water molecule, waters that you can extract from the water outlet. And this semi-permeable membrane, note that we need to use semi-permeable membrane here again. If you don't use semi-permeable membrane, these two waters, they will mix, and they will mix, you will find a new solution, the diluted solution. These solutions are this different is the fresh water, the salt solution, they should not mix. To not for that, we need to use semi-permeable membrane if you don't want this to happen. When pressure more than osmotic pressure is applied, pure water is squeezed out of the seawater through the membrane. This pressure required for the reverse osmosis is quite high. A variety of polymer membranes are available for this purpose, and the variety of membranes that we use. A workable porous membrane is a film of cellulose acetate. The film of cellulose acetate is the porous membrane, which is a semi-permeable membrane placed over a suitable support, which is permeable to water. When this cellulose acetate applied at a certain suitable support is permeable to only water, and it is not permeable to impurities or ions. Ions like the seawater, it is Na plus ion and Cl minus ions. As I said, you might get confused. Why? Because the size of water molecules might be more than Cl individual chloride ion size or individual Na plus ion size. But it is not the individual ion that is present in the seawater. It is the hydrated ion. So hydrated ion, because certain water molecules are also associated to them through coordination or through a very strong hydrogen bond, which is stronger than the hydrogen bond that you find between two water molecules. And so it is so strong that you cannot easily break those hydrogen bond, strong hydrogen bonds, without applying any energy. And without applying energy, if you don't do that, that is why the solute particles do not move from the solution to the solvent, and this process is reverse osmosis. Now, rest of the things, other three properties, we will see in our next class, and that will hopefully be the last class for this chapter.